My name's Aaron. I'm 32. I work in Manhattan, but I grew up in a small town in Connecticut, where people wave even if they don't like you and everyone knows your father's sins better than their own. This is the story I've never told anyone. Call it. She smiled and said, "You always knew how to make me feel special." It started on a Tuesday. Tuesdays are the loneliest days. I think, too far from the past weekend, too early to dream of the next. I was staying late at the office, going through reports no one cared about but everyone pretended mattered. And then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me pick up. "Aaron?" A woman's voice whispered, soft, trembling. "It's me, Elise." I froze. Elise wasn't a name I'd heard in nearly 8 years. Not since I left home. Not since the night everything went wrong. "Elise," I echoed, my voice barely holding. "Why are you? How did you get this number?" There was a pause. "I need to see you. Please. It's about your father." That name cut through me like a shard of winter air. I hadn't spoken to my father since the summer of 2017. After the night he said, "Some things are better left buried, son." And buried they stayed. I met her at a quiet cafe off Lexington. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Elise had always been luminous, this quiet beauty with wild thoughts and sad eyes, but now she looked haunted. Her hands trembled around her coffee cup. "Your dad, he's sick," she said. "He asked for you." I leaned back. After 8 years of silence. "He sends you?" She nodded. "He couldn't call. He barely speaks anymore." She stopped herself. "Aaron, I know you don't owe him anything, but he said there's something you need to know. About your mother." That's when I noticed the ring. She was still wearing it. Thin gold band. My father's old engagement ring. That realization hit me in a slow, sinking way. She had stayed, while I had left. We sat in silence for a long time. Outside, the city moved like a blur of noise and neon. Inside, all I could hear was my heart pounding against old memories. "I'll go," I said finally, but only for her, not him. My childhood home was the same, brick walls cracking under years of wind and silence. I opened the door to the scent of dust, lemon polish, and something else, something like grief. Elise followed behind me quietly. "He's in the study." I walked in, half expecting him to yell like he used to, but there he was, smaller, weaker, sunken into the old leather chair he used to command like a throne. He turned his head slowly. His eyes, once so sharp and cold, softened when they saw me. "Aaron," he rasped. "You came." I nodded. I didn't speak. He coughed hard, and Elise rushed in with a glass of water. I stood there, not knowing what to feel. "I don't have long," he said after catching his breath. "There's a letter in my desk, top drawer. Your mother wrote it before she died." I blinked. "What are you talking about?" "She died in the crash." "There wasn't." "She didn't die in the crash, son," he whispered. "She took her own life, and she left that letter for you. I kept it from you. I thought I was protecting you, but I see now, I wasn't." My legs went numb. My mother had always been the warm light in our cold house. She hummed while she cooked. She kissed my forehead when she thought I was asleep. She died when I was 16. I was told it was an accident. The rain, the curve in the road. My father looked at me with wet eyes. "I'm sorry." I didn't know what hurt more, his apology or the years I'd lived with the wrong grief. I opened the drawer with trembling hands. The envelope was there, my name in her cursive. I took it out, stared at it, but couldn't bring myself to open it. That night, I sat on the front porch with Elise. The air was thick with the scent of honeysuckle and the rustle of memories. "I hated you for staying," I told her. She looked down. "I hated myself too." "But you loved him." "No, I loved what I thought he could be." She glanced at me, and I stayed because I was afraid. Afraid if I left, he'd die alone. And I didn't want to live with that weight. We sat quietly. Then, she leaned into me, just slightly, and whispered, "You always knew how to make me feel special." It hit me like a wave crashing against a sealed vault of emotions. We had loved once, quietly, secretly, dangerously. My best friend's mother. My father's second wife. She had been 29 when they married. I was 18, and we never crossed a line. Not back then. But now, she reached for my hand, and I didn't pull away. The porch light flickered as night fell deeper around us. I could feel the weight of her hand in mine, delicate, hesitant, familiar in a way that both comforted and terrified me. "Elise?" I whispered, unsure if I was warning her or myself. "I know," she said before I could finish. "This is wrong." But neither of us moved. The sound of wind brushing through the trees echoed like something was being stirred from sleep. Somewhere inside the house, the floor creaked. We both turned slightly, then laughed, nervously, like teenagers caught doing something they couldn't explain. It was strange being back here. This house used to feel like a prison. Now it felt like a museum, full of exhibits no one had dusted, emotions embalmed in every room. "I think I need air," I said, standing abruptly. "I'll walk down to the lake." She nodded without asking to come. The lake behind the house was where I used to escape. I'd sit on the dock, headphones in, blocking out the shouting from inside. It was still there, wood warped, nails rusted, but it held. Like me, I opened the envelope under moonlight. The letter began simply, "My sweet boy, if you're reading this, then you know, I didn't slip on that road. I chose to leave, and I'm sorry." I sat there, feeling like I had been stabbed in 1,000 invisible places. She wrote about the nights she cried in the pantry so I wouldn't hear, about my father's silences, his cold punishments, and then she wrote about Elise. She knew about the way I looked at her, about the silence between us that always felt too loud, about the day she saw me leave a pressed flower in Elise's book and the look on Elise's face when she found it. But she didn't judge me. She wrote, "You loved with your whole heart, even when it wasn't allowed. That's something your father could never do. Don't lose that." I couldn't hold the tears anymore. They streamed down hot and confused. Grief, guilt, love, betrayal. Everything mixed in the pit of my chest like a storm. When I returned to the house, Elise was sitting at the dining table, her face pale. "He had a seizure after you left," she said. "He's resting now, but it's close." I nodded. The letter folded in my hand like a wound I couldn't stitch. Then something changed in her face. She stared at me, lips pressed together, until finally she said, "You weren't the only one he lied to." "What do you mean?" She stood slowly and walked to the sideboard drawer. From it, she pulled out a smaller envelope, unmarked, yellowing. "He wrote this to me years ago. I found it last month while cleaning. It was hidden in an old file. He never meant for me to read it." She handed it to me, inside in my father's sharp handwriting. "I can't trust Elise. She knows too much. If she ever speaks to Aaron, everything comes undone." I told her enough lies to keep her quiet. I don't know how long it will last. I stared at the paper, my hands trembling. "What was he hiding?" I asked. "I don't know," Elise whispered. "But I think your mother knew. I think that's why she..." Her voice cracked. "Do you think he hurt her?" I asked. Elise didn't answer, but she didn't deny it either. The next morning, I woke to the sound of the hospice nurse on the phone. "He's fading fast," she said. I walked to the study where my father lay, his breathing shallow, eyes closed. But when I sat beside him, he opened them, barely. "I'm here," I said. "I was wrong," he whispered. "About so many things." "Tell me the truth," I said. "About Mom, about Elise, about what you did." He looked past me. Then his lips curled into the faintest smile. "Some stories die with the man." And just like that, he was gone. The funeral was small. No tears, just formality. But something stayed behind in that house. Something unanswered. Elise stood with me as they lowered the casket. "I wanted to hate him," she said softly. "But part of me still loved him." "I don't think he ever knew how to love," I replied. We left together in silence. That night, back at the house, I found a box in the attic. One I didn't recognize. Inside were old photographs, journal pages, and, tucked beneath a floorboard, an audio cassette. Labeled, July 2nd, 2017, the day before my mother died. I stared at it, heart pounding. "I thought we'd buried that," Elise said from behind me. I turned slowly. "You knew about this?" She nodded, eyes shimmering. "I didn't know where it was. I thought he destroyed it." "What's on it?" "I don't know, but I think it's why she died." The cassette felt warm in my hands, though I knew it was just adrenaline. I dusted off my father's old tape recorder, still on the bookshelf in the study, where time had yellowed the edges of forgotten novels. Elise sat on the edge of the couch. Her eyes refused to meet mine. She looked like she was bracing for something she already feared was true. I slid the tape in, pressed play. The static hit first. Then came my mother's voice, fragile, breathy. "If you're hearing this, it means I didn't have the courage to survive what I know. Or maybe I finally did." A pause. "I've lived for years inside this house with a man I no longer recognize, and a woman I once tried to understand. Elise." Elise's eyes widened. "I know you loved him, Elise. I know you stayed for your own reasons. But you knew what he did. Or at least you suspected it. And you did nothing." Elise stood up sharply, hands shaking. No, she's wrong. "I didn't." I held up my hand. "Let it finish. I tried to keep our son safe," my mother continued. "Tried to love him hard enough that he wouldn't feel the coldness creeping into his bones. But I see it now, how that coldness lives in all of us. Even me. Because I saw what he did. And I stayed. Couldn't breathe. I saw the ledger, the money, the names, what he was doing at the company, the threats, the woman who went missing. Her name was Clara. She tried to expose him. And the next week, she was gone." There was a tremble in her voice now. The unraveling. "I think he had something to do with it. I think he..." Her voice cracked. "And I was too afraid. So I stayed quiet. And that silence is eating me alive." Silence. Then a final sentence. "If you're listening, Aaron, I hope you become a man brave enough to break the cycle. And Elise, if you're there, please tell the truth. For once." The tape clicked. The silence that followed was brutal. Elise had sunk to the floor. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in those 10 minutes. "I didn't know about Clara," she whispered. "But I knew things were off. Your father would leave at night. He'd get phone calls from blocked numbers. I asked once. He told me if I valued my life, I'd shut up." Tears rolled down her cheeks. And I shut up. I sat there staring at the wall, the ghosts pressing closer now. I thought I'd come back for closure, but all I had were doors that had been violently kicked open. I stood and walked into the hallway, my father's office. I tore through his drawers, shelves, safe. I didn't know what I was looking for, until I found it, a hidden folder behind a false back in the file cabinet. Inside, photocopies of checks, shell companies, cash drops, and a photograph, Clara, and another man, my father's former boss. My father wasn't just abusive. He had been laundering money. And when Clara, his secretary, found out, she disappeared. My mother must have found this file before she died. My whole life was built on this lie. I left that house the next morning. Elise came with me to the train station, her face pale, hollow. "We should tell someone," she said, "about what he did." I shook my head. "The statute of limitations is probably over. And anyone who helped him, they've already buried it." "But your mother, Clara?" I turned to her slowly. "You stayed quiet then," I said. "Don't pretend you get to choose justice now." It wasn't cruel, just true. Elise looked down. "Do you hate me?" I didn't answer, but as I boarded the train, I looked back at her, and I saw her smile. Not sad, not pleading, just human. A woman who made mistakes like my mother did, like I had. A woman I had once loved, when I was too young to understand the weight of real love. And in that moment, I finally forgave her. 2 months later, I moved out of the city, took a job teaching high school English in Vermont. I live in a small cottage now, right? Sometimes. I still haven't told anyone this story. Until now, I kept my mother's letter. I framed her last line and placed it on my bookshelf. Don't lose that heart of yours, no matter what the world does to it. Some days, I look at it and feel nothing. Other days, it breaks me all over again. Because loving someone, even when it's wrong or complicated, can leave marks that never fully fade. But I also know this now. Love isn't just about how someone makes you feel. It's about who you become because of them. And sometimes, that's the most dangerous part. 3 years passed. I never went back to Connecticut. I never needed to. The past, I learned, has a way of living inside you whether or not you revisit its streets. Teaching suited me. There was something redemptive about handing young minds the same books I used to escape into, The Catcher in the Rye of Mice and Men, even Sylvia Plath. Some kids rolled their eyes, but every once in a while, I'd see one of them stop and stare at a page like they'd just seen a ghost of their own reflection. Those were the moments I lived for. One fall afternoon, after a long day of grading papers and drinking too much coffee, I stopped by the local bookstore in town. The owner, Louise, waved as usual, and I made my way to the back, secondhand fiction, where the real gold was buried. That's when I saw her, Elise, standing near the poetry shelf, wearing a slate gray coat, her hair slightly shorter now, her eyes softer. She was holding a copy of Milk and Honey, flipping through it absently like she didn't believe in the words anymore. I froze. She looked up and smiled, not startled, not guilty, like she'd expected this, like the world had been inching us toward this moment slowly, without either of us knowing. "Hey," she said, her voice a whisper of itself. "Elise," I replied, unsure if I was awake. She gestured to the book. "I still don't understand poems, but I think I'm starting to understand silence." I laughed softly but sincerely. "That's half the work, really." We walked together after that, just around the block. The Vermont air was sharp and clean, like honesty. We didn't say much at first. It was the kind of silence that came after a storm, not the kind that warns of one. "I moved to Boston," she finally said. "Opened a flower shop. Tiny, but it feels good. Doing something that doesn't require me to lie." I smiled. "That sounds like you." She looked at me, head tilted slightly. "Do you ever think about that night? On the porch?" I nodded. "Sometimes, but not the way you'd think." "And how do I think?" "That it was about us." She raised an eyebrow. "But it wasn't," I said. "It was about who we used to be, and who we were afraid to become." She stopped walking. We were under a maple tree, red leaves falling between us like tiny flames. "You still carry her words?" she asked gently. "In my bones." She smiled. "I kept something too," she said. "That flower you left in my book. The one I never showed anyone." Her hand reached into her coat. A small envelope. A pressed violet, aged but intact. I always meant to return it, but I didn't want to believe we were over. Not really. I took it from her, fingers grazing hers. "I think," I said slowly, "we weren't meant to stay in each other's lives. We were meant to wake each other up." She nodded, eyes glassy. I was asleep for a long time. I looked at the flower again, delicate and bruised with time. "Me too." And then, without another word, she turned and walked away. Not hurried, not hesitant, just complete. I stood there a while longer. Let the wind push through me. Let the memories ripple without resistance. Then I went home. If you've made it to the end of the story, I want to leave you with something. Love isn't always about the person you end up with. Sometimes it's about the person who breaks you just enough for the light to get in. It's the person who touches a part of your soul so deeply that you are forced to confront who you are, who you could be, if you just stopped pretending. We all have someone like that. A friend, parent, a forbidden kiss under a dying porch light. And if you're lucky, or brave enough, you'll thank them someday, even if only in silence. Because no matter how dark the road, or how heavy the past, you always have the power to choose who you become. And that's the most beautiful kind of love there is.